What's going on, gamers? I am Rakama18, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite archetypes, which is Destroy. This is one that has held up since the very beginning of Marvel Snap, and it hasn't had like the greatest additions of late. It has had some interesting ones, but not necessarily the best meta cards. But I do think this one is going to add some very interesting wrinkles. We're going to talk about a lot with this deck. So let's dive right in. This is Moira X. She's a Series 5 card coming with the September season of Marvel Snap. She has 1 energy, 2 power, which is not a terrible energy amount, right? 1 for 2 is mid-level to low level. But what really makes this shine, as always, is the description, which is when this card is destroyed, get a copy of your opening hand. So number one, first thing you got to remember is this has to be in play to be destroyed. So remember that at all times. This isn't a in-hand sort of utility or anything like that. Obviously, this fits very well within a lot of very standard destroy decks. One of the most well-used and well-rounded decks is Deadpool, X-23, Bucky Barnes Carnage, Wolverine, Killmonger, Venom, Deathlock, Sabretooth, Null, and Death. We're going to talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses of this one. We're going to talk about some of the alternatives that you might use in this deck and why I think this is a very exciting card. If you have been using Destroy in the past, you will know that in this particular deck, one of the most utilized cards is Eco. Specifically for the ability to destroy your next card and draw 2 cards. I think this is a direct replacement for that as a destroy card. Nico is one of those cards that has like a lot of value, but can also just kind of sit in your hand and you're like a little irritated that it's rotating. I didn't get the spell I wanted. And then sometimes you'll find one where it's like, okay, I get to change the location, but that's not really helping my archetype. So I think Nico's a great card, don't get me wrong, but I think this is a more exciting destroy card as it fits into the pretty utility, pretty standard destroy meta. And the reason for that is specifically is for 2 things. Obviously, most of you are probably pretty familiar with this deck. You're placing cards, you're destroying them, gaining value or power or change in some way as a result of that, leading up to a free death card, hopefully, and a null play as well. Now, with this particular card, I think it adds a interesting wrinkle to get 2 copies. Like in some cases, you'll pull. There is a little bit of RNG here, so don't mistake me in this. But in this case, if you got 2 nulls and 2 deaths, for example, you could play there's a scenario in which you could play 2 nulls and 2 deaths on turn 6 or 5 and 6 because you get an opening copy of those, and then null is gaining power for both of them. If you get some extra utility from or energy from X-23, you can play 1 on 5, and then if you want to, you can play it on 6. This creates a world in which Shang-Chi is minimized as a counter. It creates a world in which you are able to slam even more power on turn 5 and 6 and really throw off a number of counters to this. The other exciting way that this is interesting is it offers more options. The less powerful version of this is that it offers more options in terms of both utility and destroy, right? So like usually when the value of Sabretooth is that you get to destroy it for free every time you use it. If you got 2 of those, you're gaining 2 free destroys. If you use Carnage and then get to use them again, you're gaining the ability to continue that meta, utility and the archetype. This card, honestly, in a lot of ways feels very similar, and maybe even like stronger than the Grand Arena version of Carnage, which allowed you to move Carnage from one location to another and trigger its attack again. Because you're just getting flat out extra copies of these cards. And the weakness of this is that if you don't draw them in the right order, you're not really getting a chance to destroy it. And if you don't really want copies of the specific cards, it's really not adding any value for you. But there's a lot of ways that it can really, really make sense. And it's relatively cheap. 1-2 is very easy to play. You can play that right away if it pulls. Destroy it right away, get those extra copies, start churning out some extra destroys, and then you can slam down some extra power towards the end. The only difference, I think, with Nico in this one is that you're not drawing any cards from your hand or from your deck that might help you later. All you're doing is continuing to destroy what's already there or activate utility that's already there. Obviously, the standard counters for this one are still there. You've got armor is a very hard counter. There are some zones that you have to be watchful of, like Wakanda. There are counters to this one, like Shang-Chi, or some of the movement decks going to start to take off a little bit as a result of Viv Vision. One of the decks that I just put out was for Viv Vision. I think that disrupts style where they're moving cards out of your cards out of the way. Can be kind of a hard counter to it because if you've got Deadpool here and you get moved, you play Carnage. Carnage has now gone off without being able to destroy anything. However, I do think Moira X adds a little bit of a protection against that, and a protection against armor, and a protection against Cosmo, in that it allows you to move that utility over at a cost that you have to replay them again. It's still valuable, and it may not necessarily win you the game, but it does help to sort of counteract those strong hard counters to your deck. Also, discard can be a little bit of a hard one for this one to counter in some ways because discard is going to stack quite a bit more power, and if you're not pulling the right cards at the right time, it's going to be maybe hard to keep up. It also can go the other way, where you pull the cards in the right order and you get a double version of Null and Death, and now you're playing, 90 power on turn 6, 5, and 6 with very little cost. So I think this is a very interesting card. It's one of the more interesting utility destroy cards that has been added to the game in at least a year, in my opinion. It's certainly better than Elixir, which can be a fun card to play with, but it's not really going to win you very many games because it requires so many things to fall into place in the exact right order. Also, be very careful with this one with mill decks because a lot of your cards get destroyed. But again, if you're able to get those extra copies in your hand, minimizes mill as well. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you think of this video? What do you think of this game? What do you think of this card? I will see you next week for a brand new Series 5 card, which I'm very excited to talk about. Make sure to hit the sub button on the way out, and I will see you again next time.